The autumn wind swept through Chicago's financial district, carrying the scent of rain and exhaust as Marcus Vitale reviewed acquisition reports in his private booth at Giordano's. The restaurant served as more than a family establishment. It functioned as neutral ground where the city's power brokers conducted business away from prying eyes and federal surveillance. His lieutenant Vincent stood nearby, scanning the room with practiced vigilance while Marcus signed off on legitimate real estate ventures that masked the syndicate's true revenue streams. At 32, Marcus had transformed his late father's struggling operation into a sophisticated empire spanning construction, hospitality, and strategic political influence. The heavy oak door burst open with enough force to shatter the lunch hour's cultivated calm. Every guard's hand moved instinctively toward concealed weapons as a small figure darted past the startled hostess, his sneakers squeaking against polished marble floors. A little boy, no older than 6, stood trembling in the center of the restaurant's main dining area. His Superman backpack hung crooked on narrow shoulders, dirt smudged across his tear-streaked face, chest heaving with panicked breaths that made his small frame shake visibly. "Please, sir." The child's voice cracked with desperation as his eyes locked onto Marcus with the instinctive recognition that this man commanded authority. "Daddy left with bad men this morning. They had guns. He told me to run and find help. Please." The room froze in suspended tension. Chicago's most feared man staring down at a child who had just committed the unthinkable. Interrupting Marcus Vitale's private lunch with a desperate plea that had nothing to do with territory disputes or business negotiations. For 3 heartbeats, silence reigned as Marcus's dark eyes assessed the trembling child. He noted the fresh scrape on the boy's knee, the way his small hands clenched and unclenched with nervous energy, the genuine terror in eyes too young to understand manufactured emotion. Something ancient and carefully buried stirred behind Marcus's carefully constructed mask of professional detachment. A memory of his own childhood, watching his father dragged from their home by rivals, the helplessness that had forged him into the man he'd become. "Boss?" Vincent murmured, uncertainty clouding his usually confident demeanor as other patrons watched this bizarre interruption with varying degrees of concern and curiosity. Marcus rose slowly, his movement deliberate as he crossed the distance to kneel before the boy, bringing himself eye-level despite his immaculate charcoal suit. The child flinched, but held his ground with courage that transcended his years. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, his voice softer than any of his men had heard in years, the dangerous edge replaced by something unexpectedly gentle. "Jamie," the boy whispered, wiping his nose with the back of his hand, his entire body trembling like a leaf caught in storm winds. "Jamie Cooper. The bad men came to our apartment and Daddy said I had to hide in the closet, but I watched through the crack and they had guns and—" His voice broke completely as tears spilled fresh down his dirt-smudged cheeks. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Marcus caught the flash of recognition in Vincent's eyes at the name Cooper. They both knew exactly who this child's father was, though the implications would need to wait until after they'd secured the boy's immediate safety. "Jamie, I need you to take a deep breath for me," Marcus instructed calmly, placing a steady hand on the child's thin shoulder. "Can you do that? In through your nose, out through your mouth." The boy obeyed with visible effort, his chest stuttering as he attempted to control his panic. Marcus felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest, a protective instinct he hadn't experienced since his younger brother's death 15 years ago. "Good. You did exactly the right thing coming here," Marcus continued, already making decisions that would alter countless lives, including his own. "Now, I'm going to help your dad, but first I need you to stay with Maria." He nodded toward the hostess, whose maternal instincts had already brought her closer with a glass of water and a concerned expression. "She's going to get you something to eat while I make some calls. Can you be brave a little longer?" Jamie nodded frantically, relief flooding his young features even as his body continued to shake with residual terror. "You're really going to help? You promise?" Marcus met those desperate eyes with absolute certainty. "I promise. Nobody takes people from my city without answering to me." If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The transformation from concerned benefactor to cold strategist took seconds. Marcus rose to his full height, his expression hardening as Vincent immediately moved to his side, already pulling out his encrypted phone. "Cooper works data analysis for Westbrook Financial," Vincent reported quietly as they moved toward Marcus's private office in the back. "Clean record, no gambling debts, no criminal associations we're aware of. Wife died 6 months ago. Cancer. Just him and the kid." Marcus's jaw tightened as pieces began assembling in his mind. The Bratva moved 3 shell companies through Westbrook last quarter. If Cooper stumbled onto their money laundering operation, he's either leverage or a loose end they're tying up, Vincent finished grimly. Either way, they took him in broad daylight from a residential building. That's bold even for Dimitri's crew. The office door closed behind them with a decisive click as Marcus moved to the window overlooking the street, his mind already calculating angles and probabilities. The Russian Bratva had been encroaching on Chicago territory for months, testing boundaries with increasingly aggressive moves. "How long ago?" Marcus demanded, checking his watch with tactical precision. "Kid said this morning. Based on his condition, running on adrenaline, dirt on his clothes suggesting he's been moving fast, I'd estimate 2, maybe 3 hours." Vincent calculated, already typing rapid commands into his tablet. "I'm pulling traffic cameras now from the Cooper residence in Lincoln Park." Marcus felt cold fury settle into his bones, the calculated rage that made him dangerous rather than reckless. A child had been traumatized, a civilian caught in territorial games, all happening in his city without his knowledge or permission. "Get Santos on surveillance. I want every Bratva property mapped and monitored within the hour," Marcus ordered, his tone carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Pull financial records on Daniel Cooper, everything. Bank accounts, credit cards, phone records. If he so much as bought coffee somewhere unusual, I want to know about it." Vincent's fingers flew across his screen, coordinating resources with practiced efficiency. "Dimitri's crew operates primarily out of the meatpacking district. If they're holding Cooper for information extraction, they'll use one of 3 locations. I'm sending teams to establish perimeter surveillance now." The tactical map illuminated Vincent's tablet, showing real-time positions of Marcus's security network across Chicago's various districts. Red markers indicated known Bratva operations, while blue dots represented Vitale syndicate assets. "The kid," Vincent ventured carefully, watching Marcus's reflection in the window. "We bringing him along or securing him elsewhere?" Marcus turned from the window, decision already made. "He stays with me. If Cooper's being held for information, the Bratva might decide the son is additional leverage. Jamie's safest where I can personally guarantee his security." Back in the main dining area, Jamie sat in a corner booth with Maria hovering protectively nearby, a plate of untouched chicken fingers before him. His small hands gripped a glass of chocolate milk, but his eyes remained fixed on the office door, watching for Marcus's return. The boy looked impossibly small in the oversized booth, his Superman backpack still clutched against his chest like a shield. Dried tear tracks marked his face, and his lower lip trembled despite obvious efforts to remain brave as instructed. Marcus approached the booth with Vincent following close behind, both men unconsciously softening their typically intimidating demeanors in the child's presence. Jamie immediately straightened, hope and fear warring across his young features. Jamie, I found out where your dad might be, Marcus stated, settling into the booth across from the boy with careful casualness. We're going to go get him, but I need you to come with me. Is that okay? The child nodded vigorously, abandoning the chocolate milk to scramble from the booth. I can help. I'm good at being quiet. Daddy says I'm like a ninja when I'm playing hide and seek. Despite the grim circumstances, Marcus felt the corner of his mouth twitch upward at the boy's earnest determination. I'm sure you are, but your most important job is to stay safe while my team handles the difficult part. Deal? Deal. Jamie agreed solemnly, extending his small hand to shake on it with endearing formality. The touch of those tiny fingers against his palm sent an unexpected wave of protectiveness through Marcus's chest. This child trusted him completely, invested absolute faith in a stranger because desperation left no alternative. That trust felt heavier than any business obligation Marcus had ever shouldered. Vincent had already brought the car around, a black Escalade with bulletproof glass and reinforced panels that looked like any other luxury vehicle but functioned as a mobile fortress. Jamie's eyes widened as Marcus opened the door, revealing leather interior and sophisticated technology. Whoa, the boy breathed, momentarily distracted from his terror by the impressive vehicle. This is like Batman's car. Something like that, Marcus agreed, helping Jamie into the back seat and ensuring his seatbelt was properly secured. The simple domestic gesture felt foreign yet strangely natural, muscle memory from a childhood spent caring for his younger brother before violence had stolen that innocence. As they pulled into Chicago traffic, Jamie pressed his face against the window, watching the city pass with the resilient fascination unique to children who could find wonder even in crisis. His small hands left fingerprints on the tinted glass. "Where's your mom, Jamie?" Marcus asked carefully, needing to understand the full scope of the situation before proceeding. The boy's shoulders slumped, his excitement dimming as reality reasserted itself. "Mommy died," he said quietly, his voice carrying the matter-of-fact sadness of a child who'd learned too young about permanent loss. "She was sick for a really long time. The doctors tried really hard, but the cancer was too strong." Marcus exchanged a meaningful glance with Vincent in the rearview mirror. A recently widowed father with no extended family support, working at a financial firm that handled questionable international accounts. Daniel Cooper was exactly the type of vulnerable target criminal organizations exploited. "I'm sorry about your mom," Marcus said simply, rejecting empty platitudes in favor of honest acknowledgement. "That must have been very hard." Jamie nodded, still staring out the window. "Daddy cries sometimes at night when he thinks I'm sleeping. He tries to be happy during the day, but I know he's sad. That's why I have to be extra good and not cause trouble." The weight of that statement, a 6-year-old child trying to manage his grieving father's emotional state, struck Marcus with unexpected force. This kid had already endured more loss than most adults, and now faced the potential of losing his only remaining parent. "You're doing a great job taking care of your dad," Marcus told him seriously. "Coming to find help when he was in danger? That was incredibly brave. A lot of adults wouldn't have your courage." Pride flickered across Jamie's features before anxiety reclaimed dominance. "Will we get there in time?" The bad men looked really angry. They were yelling in a different language. Russian, Marcus thought grimly, confirming his suspicions about Bratva involvement. "We'll get there," he assured the boy with quiet certainty. "I'm very good at finding people who don't want to be found." Vincent's tablet chimed with incoming data as they navigated through midday traffic toward the industrial district. "Surveillance confirms Cooper's phone last pinged near the meatpacking facilities 3 hours ago," he reported, keeping his voice low. "Santos has eyes on the primary location. Single entry point, 3 visible guards, no windows on ground level." Marcus processed this information with tactical precision, mentally mapping the facility's layout from memory. The Bratva had purchased that particular warehouse 6 months ago through a shell company, ostensibly for legitimate cold storage, but actually serving as a distribution hub for stolen electronics and occasional interrogation site. How many inside? Marcus asked, his hand moving unconsciously to check the weapon concealed beneath his jacket. Thermal imaging shows 8 heat signatures, one isolated in the northeast corner, likely Cooper. The others concentrated near the main floor area. Jamie had gone very quiet in the back seat, his face pressed against the window as shabby residential buildings gave way to industrial warehouses and empty lots. The boy seemed to sense they were approaching something significant, his small body tensing with anticipation. Jamie, I need you to listen very carefully, Marcus said, turning in his seat to face the child directly. When we get to where your dad is, you're going to stay in the car with Vincent. No matter what you hear or see, you stay here where it's safe. Understand? The boy's eyes welled with tears, but he nodded obediently. But what if Daddy needs me? Your dad needs you safe, Marcus corrected gently but firmly. The bravest thing you can do right now is trust me to bring him back to you. The warehouse district sprawled before them like an abandoned industrial graveyard, rusted metal structures and cracked pavement bearing witness to Chicago's manufacturing decline. The target facility sat at the far end, its exterior deliberately neglected to avoid drawing attention despite the sophisticated security systems Marcus knew protected its interior. 3 black SUVs were already positioned strategically around the perimeter when they arrived, Santos and his team maintaining surveillance while awaiting Marcus's orders. The operation had been coordinated with the efficiency that made the Vitale syndicate Chicago's dominant force. Vincent pulled to a stop 2 buildings away, positioning the Escalade with clear sightlines but adequate cover. He immediately engaged the vehicle's security locks, transforming the SUV into an impenetrable safe room. I'll be back soon, Marcus promised Jamie, whose brave facade was crumbling as fear reasserted itself. Vincent's going to stay right here with you. If anything feels wrong, he knows exactly what to do. Okay, Jamie whispered, clutching his Superman backpack with white-knuckled intensity. Marcus paused, struck by sudden impulse, and removed his watch, an understated Patek Philippe worth more than most people's cars. He fastened it around Jamie's tiny wrist where it hung comically oversized. You hold on to this for me, Marcus said. It was my father's. That means I have to come back to get it, right? Jamie stared at the watch with awe, carefully adjusting it so the face sat properly on his small wrist. I'll keep it super safe, I promise. The exchange felt significant in ways Marcus couldn't fully articulate, a tangible promise, an anchor connecting him to this child who had stumbled into his life hours ago, yet somehow already occupied unexpected space in his carefully guarded world. Santos approached as Marcus exited the vehicle, the security chief's scarred face impassive as he provided final updates. No change in positions. 3 exterior guards, estimated 5 inside including the target. Dimitri himself isn't on site. This is lower-level crew. Cooper's condition? Marcus asked, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. Alive, moving periodically, likely conscious but restrained based on thermal patterns. Marcus nodded, his expression hardening into the cold mask his enemies knew and feared. Full extraction. No fatalities unless absolutely necessary. I don't want federal attention on this operation, but make it clear that taking civilians in my territory has consequences. The team moved with practiced coordination, Santos's men flowing toward strategic positions around the warehouse perimeter. Marcus approached the main entrance directly, his calculated boldness making a statement. This wasn't a covert operation, but a deliberate assertion of territorial authority. The exterior guard barely had time to register Marcus's presence before finding himself disarmed and on the ground, Santos's efficient takedown leaving him conscious but thoroughly neutralized. The second guard fared similarly, professional precision rendering resistance futile. Inside, the warehouse smelled of rust, old blood, and the distinctive metallic scent of fear. Harsh fluorescent lights illuminated a cavernous space filled with industrial equipment and storage containers. 5 men turned at Marcus's entrance, surprise, registering on their faces before training kicked in. At the center of the concrete floor, bound to a metal chair, sat Daniel Cooper. Blood trickled from his split lip, and one eye had swollen nearly shut, but he remained conscious, defiant, even in captivity. The data analyst's slight build and bookish appearance contrasted sharply with his captor's brutal physicality. Marcus Vitale, the apparent leader greeted, recovering from his surprise with false bravado. "You're outside your usual territory. This is Bratva business." "This is my city," Marcus corrected, his voice carrying lethal calm as Santos's team secured the perimeter. "Which makes everything that happens here my business, especially when children get involved." Recognition flickered across Daniel Cooper's battered face, confusion and desperate hope warring as he processed that Chicago's most feared crime boss had somehow arrived to interrupt his interrogation. "The analyst saw things he shouldn't have," the Bratva lieutenant continued, attempting to maintain negotiating position despite rapidly deteriorating circumstances. "Dmitri simply wants assurance of his discretion." Marcus moved closer to Cooper, noting the man's injuries with cold assessment. Bruised ribs, facial trauma, defensive wounds on his hands. They'd been working him over professionally, but hadn't yet escalated to permanent damage. "Your methods involve traumatizing children," Marcus stated flatly. "That's unacceptable." He produced a knife, and for a moment tension spiked before Marcus simply cut the restraints binding Cooper to the chair. The analyst nearly collapsed, catching himself against the chair as circulation returned painfully to his limbs. "Can you walk?" Marcus asked him directly. Daniel nodded shakily, using the chair for support as he struggled to his feet. "My son, Jamie, is he safe, waiting in my car?" Marcus assured him, watching relief flood the man's face so intensely it nearly buckled his knees again. The Bratva lieutenant took a threatening step forward, hand moving toward his weapon. "Dmitri won't accept this interference. You're starting a war over some accountant who saw too much." "No," Marcus corrected, his tone dropping to that dangerous register that preceded violence. "I'm ending an unauthorized operation in my territory. Tell Dmitri that if he has business concerns in Chicago, he schedules a meeting through proper channels. He doesn't snatch civilians and traumatize children." What followed happened with brutal efficiency. Santos's team had already secured the warehouse exits, leaving the Bratva crew with no viable escape routes. The message Marcus intended to send required clarity rather than carnage, a demonstration of capability without escalating to full conflict. 3 minutes later, 5 Bratva operatives were restrained on the warehouse floor, thoroughly disarmed and aware they'd been comprehensively outmaneuvered. Daniel Cooper leaned heavily on Marcus as they exited, into gray afternoon light, the analyst's relief at survival evident in his ragged breathing. "Why?" Daniel asked as they approached the Escalade where Jamie's small face pressed against the window. "Why would you help us? I'm nobody to you." Marcus considered the question, watching the moment Jamie spotted his father through tinted glass, the boy's face transforming with joy and relief. "Your son had courage to ask for help when it mattered most. That deserves respect." The car door burst open before Vincent could properly unlock it, Jamie tumbling out with a cry of, "Daddy!" that carried every ounce of fear, relief, and desperate love a child could express. Daniel dropped to his knees despite his injuries, gathering his son into a fierce embrace that spoke volumes about their bond. Both were crying openly, Jamie's small hands patting his father's face as if confirming his reality. "You came back," Jamie sobbed. "Mr. Marcus brought you back just like he promised." Marcus maintained respectful distance, allowing the reunion its privacy while his team efficiently sanitized the scene behind them. Vincent approached quietly, falling into step beside his boss as they watched father and son cling to each other. The Bratva won't let this pass without response, Vincent observed. Let them respond, Marcus replied calmly. They violated protocols first. Daniel finally stood, lifting Jamie despite his injuries, the boy wrapping arms and legs around him with desperate intensity. He turned to Marcus with an expression combining gratitude, confusion, and dawning awareness of the dangerous world he'd stumbled into. Thank you, Daniel said simply, the inadequate words carrying the weight of genuine emotion. I thought, when they took me, I thought Jamie would be alone. He won't be, Marcus found himself promising, the commitment emerging before conscious consideration. We need to talk about why they targeted you, but first, let's get you medical attention and somewhere secure. The drive to Marcus's private facility passed in relative silence, Jamie refusing to leave his father's lap despite the available seating. The boy kept touching Daniel's face, his small hands gentle around the bruising as if ensuring his father's continued solidity. Marcus watched this tender reunion through the rearview mirror, something tightening painfully in his chest. The fierce protective love between father and son resonated with memories of his own father, the good years before violence had consumed their family and shaped Marcus into the man he'd become. Mr. Marcus? Jamie's voice cut through his thoughts, the boy's eyes meeting his in the mirror. You're really good at hero stuff, like really, really good. Despite the day's gravity, Marcus felt his mouth curve slightly. I had good teachers. The medical facility occupied the top floor of a building Marcus owned in the Gold Coast, its state-of-the-art equipment staffed by discreet professionals accustomed to treating injuries that couldn't be explained through conventional channels. Dr. Sarah Chen emerged from her office as they arrived, taking in Daniel's condition with clinical efficiency. Examination room 2, she directed, already pulling on gloves. The child can wait in the adjacent lounge. There's juice and snacks. I want to stay with Daddy, Jamie protested immediately, his grip tightening on Daniel's shirt with white-knuckled determination. Daniel winced but didn't protest his son's clinging, clearly unwilling to separate after their trauma. It's okay, buddy. I'll be right through that door. You can see me the whole time through the window. The compromise satisfied Jamie enough that he allowed Vincent to guide him to the adjacent room, though his eyes never left his father through the large observation window that connected the spaces. Marcus lingered in the doorway as Dr. Chen began her assessment, noting each injury with professional detachment. 3 cracked ribs, concussion protocol, facial trauma consistent with blunt force, she catalogued. You'll be sore for weeks, Mr. Cooper, but nothing requiring surgical intervention. You're fortunate they didn't have more time with you. Daniel met Marcus's eyes over the doctor's shoulder. They wanted account access codes, financial records proving their shell companies connect to legitimate businesses. When I refused, he gestured at his battered face. Did you give them anything? Marcus asked, the question carrying tactical weight rather than judgment. No. I stalled. Gave wrong codes. Bought time. Daniel's voice dropped lower. I kept thinking Jamie would be alone if I gave them what they wanted, and they killed me anyway. Figured my best chance was hoping the bad codes would buy time for... I don't know what I was hoping for. You hoped for your son's courage, Marcus observed. Smart strategy. Through the observation window, Jamie had discovered a basket of children's books, but kept glancing up to verify his father's continued presence with the vigilance of a child who'd learned that safety could evaporate without warning. Dr. Chen finished her examination, providing Daniel with pain medication and detailed instructions for home care before leaving them with privacy. The analyst stood gingerly, testing his mobility before turning to face Marcus directly. I need to understand what I've walked into, Daniel stated, his tone carrying surprising firmness despite his vulnerable position. You're Marcus Vitale. I've heard the name, the reputation. You're not exactly Chicago's neighborhood watch. Marcus appreciated the direct approach, finding unexpected respect for this mild-mannered analyst who'd endured interrogation without breaking and now demanded clarity despite obvious power imbalance. "I'm not," Marcus confirmed simply, "but your son ran into my restaurant begging for help, and children's safety isn't negotiable regardless of other considerations. The Russian mob thinks I have information that threatens their operations," Daniel continued, clearly forcing himself through fear to address reality. "Which I do. I accidentally uncovered money laundering patterns while auditing supposedly legitimate accounts. Even if you rescued us today, they won't stop. I'm a liability to them now." The tactical assessment was accurate, Marcus acknowledged silently. Daniel Cooper had become a target through unfortunate circumstance, and the Bratva wouldn't simply abandon their operational security concerns because of one interrupted interrogation. "You have options," Marcus stated, moving to stand beside Daniel at the observation window, where Jamie now colored energetically, his resilient spirit reasserting itself. "I can arrange relocation, new identities, financial support, complete disappearance. You'd be safe, but you'd lose everything familiar." Daniel's expression tightened with conflict. Jamie just lost his mother, uprooting his entire life, losing friends, his school, everything stable. He trailed off, the weight of that decision clearly crushing. "Or?" Daniel prompted, recognizing there must be an alternative by Marcus's careful phrasing. "Or you accept protection while working with my organization to document the Bratva's operations," Marcus offered. "You provide the evidence needed to dismantle their Chicago presence, and in exchange, I guarantee your family's safety." The proposition carried implications both men understood clearly. Daniel would be trading one dangerous association for another, albeit under significantly different terms, and with Marcus's demonstrated commitment to protecting his son. "Why would you take that risk?" Daniel asked bluntly. "I'm a data analyst with a kid and a mortgage. I'm not exactly valuable enough to justify whatever resources you're suggesting." Marcus turned from the window to face the analyst directly. "Your son reminded me that power means nothing if it doesn't protect those who need it most. Consider this an investment in maintaining the type of city where children can feel safe." Through the observation window, Jamie looked up from his coloring, catching sight of his father. The boy's face split into a brilliant smile as he pressed his latest artwork against the glass, a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures labeled Daddy, Jamie, and Mr. Marcus, beneath a bright yellow sun. The simple child's art carried surprising emotional weight, representing Jamie's instinctive inclusion of Marcus into their fractured family unit. Daniel followed Marcus's gaze to the drawing, something complicated flickering across his battered features. "I need time to think," Daniel said finally. It's too much to process in one day." "You have until tomorrow morning," Marcus replied, pulling a business card from his wallet. "Call this number by 8 a.m. with your decision. Until then, you're staying in a secure location where the Bratva can't reach you." The safe house occupied a converted brownstone in Lincoln Square, its elegant exterior hiding sophisticated security systems and the constant presence of Marcus's security personnel. Jamie explored the space with wide-eyed wonder, while Daniel sank onto the leather sofa with visible relief at finally reaching safety. "There's a guest room upstairs with clothes in your sizes," Marcus informed them, noting how Jamie had already discovered the kitchen stocked with child-friendly snacks. "Security outside, cameras on all entry points. You're completely safe here." Daniel nodded wearily, exhaustion finally catching up as adrenaline faded. "Thank you. For everything. Even if I can't fully comprehend why you've done this." Marcus found himself without adequate explanation, the impulse that had driven his actions today existing beyond rational strategic calculation. "Your son deserves a childhood where he feels safe," he finally offered. "Sometimes that's reason enough." As Marcus prepared to leave, Jamie appeared at his side, the boy's small hand slipping into his with natural trust. "You'll come back tomorrow?" he asked, those earnest eyes seeking reassurance. "I will," Marcus promised, surprised by how easily the commitment came. "Okay?" Jamie squeezed his hand once before releasing it. "Don't forget your watch. I kept it super safe like I promised." Marcus looked down at his wrist where the Patek Philippe now rested, returned at some point without his noticing. "So you did. Thank you for protecting it." The drive back to his penthouse passed in contemplative silence, Vincent wisely not interrupting Marcus's thoughts. The day had deviated dramatically from any predictable course, introducing complications that Marcus's usual strategic mind struggled to categorize. His penthouse overlooked Lake Michigan from the 47th floor, its minimalist design reflecting the disciplined control Marcus maintained over every aspect of his existence. Tonight, the expensive furnishings and curated art collection felt emptier than usual, the space's perfection somehow lacking after hours surrounded by Jamie's unfiltered presence. Marcus stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights reflect off dark water while his mind replayed the day's events. A child's desperate plea, a father's courage under torture, and his own unexpected investment in their survival had collectively disrupted the careful boundaries separating his professional obligations from personal connection. His phone buzzed with an incoming message from Vincent. "Bratva making noise about today's operation. Dmitri wants a meeting. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., neutral location." Marcus typed his response with economical efficiency. "Confirmed. Standard security protocols. Make it clear, we're open to resolution but won't tolerate civilian targeting." The situation with the Bratva required delicate handling, enough force to establish boundaries without triggering full territorial war. Daniel Cooper's inadvertent involvement had created leverage Marcus could exploit, provided he could keep the analyst and his son safe long enough to extract useful intelligence. Yet beneath these tactical considerations lurked something less easily defined. Jamie's trust, Daniel's desperate gratitude, and Marcus's own fierce protectiveness toward them both suggested complications beyond strategic advantage. His phone rang precisely at 7 a.m., Daniel's number appearing on the screen earlier than required. Marcus answered immediately, already anticipating the decision. "We'll work with you," Daniel stated without preamble, his voice carrying determination despite obvious nerves. "Jamie deserves stability, and running would only delay inevitable danger. At least this way, we're fighting back." "Understood," Marcus replied, respect coloring his tone. "I'll have Vincent pick you up in an hour. Bring what you need for extended stay. You'll be relocating to more permanent secure housing." "About that," Daniel interjected quickly. "Jamie starts kindergarten next week. I can't pull him out. He's already anxious about starting school without his mother. Is there any way to maintain some normalcy?" The request should have complicated everything, yet Marcus found himself already calculating solutions. "I'll arrange private security for the school, background checks on all staff and families, and monitoring of all entry points. He'll attend, but under careful protection." Daniel's relief was audible through the phone. "Thank you. You have no idea what that means for him. For us." Marcus disconnected and immediately initiated the required arrangements, his organization pivoting to accommodate civilian protection protocols they'd never previously implemented. The efficient machinery of his syndicate adapted seamlessly, personnel reassigned, and surveillance expanded within hours. By afternoon, Daniel and Jamie had relocated to Marcus's guest penthouse in the same building, the connected unit providing both proximity and appropriate separation. Jamie's excitement at the new space, particularly the game room Vincent had hastily stocked with age-appropriate entertainment, brought welcome lightness to otherwise tense circumstances. "You live here too?" Jamie asked Marcus that evening, his small face pressed against the window overlooking the city lights. "So we're neighbors now?" "Something like that," Marcus confirmed, finding himself oddly pleased by the boy's enthusiasm. Cool. Daddy says we have to be extra careful and listen to all the security rules, but I think it's like a real-life adventure. Like being a secret agent. Daniel winced at his son's cheerful interpretation of their dangerous reality, but Marcus caught the subtle relief in the father's expression. Let the child maintain innocence a little longer, time enough for harsh reality when absolutely necessary. The following morning arrived with autumn sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting geometric patterns across marble, floors that had never before witnessed a child's presence. Marcus stood in his kitchen, attempting to prepare breakfast while simultaneously reviewing security reports on his tablet, a multitasking challenge complicated by unfamiliar territory. Coffee, he understood. Eggs he could manage. But the animated conversation drifting from the connected penthouse about what constituted appropriate kindergarten attire existed entirely outside his expertise. The dinosaur shirt or the astronaut shirt? Jamie's voice carried through the open door connecting their units, the boys' serious deliberation over wardrobe choices somehow more daunting than the upcoming meeting with Dmitry Volkov. Marcus glanced toward the doorway as Daniel appeared, moving gingerly despite Dr. Chen's pain medication. The analyst's bruises had darkened overnight, purple and yellow mottling his jaw, but his eyes held determined focus as he carried his laptop. I've been reviewing the Westbrook account since 4 a.m., Daniel announced without preamble, settling carefully at the kitchen island. The Bratva's money laundering operation is more extensive than I initially realized. They're moving approximately 15 million monthly through shell companies connected to legitimate construction firms. Marcus poured coffee with one hand while scrolling through Daniel's preliminary findings with the other, his analytical mind already recognizing patterns and vulnerabilities in the financial structures. These routing patterns connect to my construction contracts, he noted, a muscle working in his jaw. They've been using my legitimate businesses as unintentional cover. Exactly, Daniel confirmed, warming to the subject despite his obvious physical discomfort. Your reputation for clean operations made you perfect camouflage. Federal investigators would never suspect money laundering through Vitale construction, given your documented compliance history. The violation felt personal beyond mere business interference. Marcus had spent years carefully separating legitimate enterprises from his syndicate's less legal activities, maintaining strict boundaries that protected both operations. The Bratva's unauthorized use of his reputation as cover represented not just territorial encroachment, but fundamental disrespect. How quickly can you document everything in a format useful for leverage? Marcus asked, already calculating how this intelligence would shift his afternoon negotiation with Dmitry. Give me 3 days with proper access to my work systems, and I can build an airtight case, Daniel replied. Every transaction, every shell company connection, enough evidence to either force them out of Chicago or hand them to federal prosecutors gift-wrapped. Jamie chose that moment to emerge from the guest bedroom, his dinosaur shirt apparently victorious in the morning's wardrobe debate. The boy carried his Superman backpack with solemn importance, clearly taking his first day of kindergarten with appropriate seriousness. Mr. Marcus, do you think dinosaurs or astronauts are cooler? Jamie asked, climbing onto the stool beside his father with practiced ease. Daddy says dinosaurs, but I think astronauts go to space, which is pretty amazing. Marcus found himself considering the question with unexpected gravity, recognizing its significance to the child waiting for his opinion. Astronauts study dinosaur fossils from space using satellite technology, he offered diplomatically. So technically, you can appreciate both simultaneously. Jamie's face lit with delight at this solution. That's so smart. See, Daddy? Mr. Marcus gets it. Daniel caught Marcus's eye over his son's head, something grateful and complicated in his expression. The simple domestic moment, breakfast, wardrobe debates, and kindergarten preparation, existed in stark contrast to the dangerous reality surrounding them. Vincent arrived precisely at 7:30, his professional demeanor softening marginally as Jamie greeted him with enthusiastic questions about the secret agent stuff he imagined comprised their security work. The lieutenant handled the child's curiosity with surprising patience, answering questions in age-appropriate terms that satisfied without revealing operational details. The school has been thoroughly vetted, Vincent reported to Marcus and Daniel, while Jamie explored the contents of his new backpack. 3 plainclothes operatives positioned strategically around the perimeter, background checks completed on all staff and families in Jamie's class, and we've installed additional security cameras covering all entry points. The principal believes we're private security for a wealthy family concerned about general safety. Daniel's relief was palpable. He's already been through so much, having something normal, something just for him. Every child deserves stability, Marcus stated, watching Jamie's animated excitement about meeting new friends, especially after loss. The drive to Lakeside Elementary School revealed Jamie's resilient spirit fully emerging from yesterday's trauma. He chattered constantly about his hopes for kindergarten. Would they have a class pet? Would he learn to read chapter books? Did Mr. Marcus think 5 years old was too young to start learning about dinosaurs properly? Marcus found himself answering each question seriously, drawn into the child's enthusiasm despite the tactical considerations occupying his strategic mind. Daniel watched these exchanges with increasing wonder, clearly not expecting Chicago's most feared crime boss to patiently explain the difference between Cretaceous and Jurassic periods. Lakeside Elementary occupied a renovated historic building in Lincoln Park, its ivy-covered brick exterior and well-maintained playground representing exactly the type of stable environment Daniel had struggled to provide on a single income. Parents milled around the entrance, most dressed in the casual affluence of Chicago's professional class. Jamie's hand found Marcus's as they approached the building, the boy's excitement tinged with nervous energy. "What if the other kids don't like me?" he whispered, vulnerability breaking through his brave facade. Marcus knelt down, bringing himself eye level with those worried eyes. "Then they're missing out on knowing someone extraordinary," he said simply. "You're brave, smart, and kind. Any kid would be lucky to be your friend." The words emerged with conviction Marcus hadn't known he possessed, this fierce certainty that Jamie deserved every good thing the world could offer. The boy's smile returned, confidence restored by adult reassurance. Inside, Jamie's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, greeted them warmly, her experienced demeanor immediately putting Daniel at ease. She had kind eyes and the patient energy of someone who genuinely loved teaching young children. Marcus maintained respectful distance while Daniel handled the parental responsibilities, though he noted every security detail with tactical precision. "Jamie, would you like to choose a cubby for your backpack?" Mrs. Patterson invited, gesturing toward colorful storage areas decorated with animal themes. The boy hesitated, glancing back at his father and Marcus as if seeking permission to step into this new world. Daniel nodded encouragingly, though his own anxiety was evident in how tightly he gripped his car keys. "The dinosaur cubby," Jamie decided, practical about maintaining thematic consistency with his shirt choice. He carefully hung his Superman backpack, then turned back to the adults. "You'll be here when school ends?" "Absolutely," Daniel promised. 3:15, right here. "I'll be here too," Marcus found himself adding, surprising everyone including himself. Jamie's resulting smile carried such pure joy that Marcus felt something crack in the carefully maintained walls around his heart. The boy threw his arms around Marcus's legs in an impulsive hug before doing the same to his father, then bounced off to explore the classroom's reading corner with newfound confidence. Outside, Daniel leaned against the Escalade with visible relief, watching through the windows as Jamie began interacting with other children. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for understanding how important this is, for making it possible. Children need stability, Marcus replied, uncomfortable with gratitude for actions that felt instinctively necessary, especially after trauma. The drive to Marcus's office passed in contemplative silence, Daniel absorbed in his laptop while Marcus reviewed final preparations for the afternoon's meeting with Dmitry Volkov. The Bratva leader had chosen Millennium Park's Cloud Gate sculpture as a neutral meeting location, public enough to discourage violence, iconic enough to make a statement. Vincent had coordinated comprehensive security, plainclothes operatives positioned throughout the park while maintaining the appearance of casual foot traffic. Every angle was covered, every contingency planned, yet Marcus felt unusual tension about this particular negotiation. "The financial documentation you're building," Marcus said as they approached his building. "How damaging would it be if strategically leaked to federal investigators?" Daniel looked up from his screen, understanding immediately. Catastrophic for their operations. The evidence trail connects directly to international trafficking and weapons smuggling, not just money laundering. We're talking decades of federal prison time for everyone involved. "Good," Marcus stated with cold satisfaction. "Then we have significant leverage beyond mere territorial authority." The morning passed in tactical preparation, Daniel working from Marcus's private office while establishing secure access to necessary financial databases. Marcus found himself checking his watch repeatedly, tracking school hours with the vigilance of someone with actual parental investment rather than strategic obligation. At 1:45, Vincent appeared in the doorway. "Dimitri's team confirmed arrival. They're bringing 4 bodyguards, which exceeds our agreed parameters." "Let them," Marcus decided. Dimitri's insecurity about appearing without excessive security will weaken his negotiating position. The walk through Millennium Park took them past tourists, photographing the reflective Cloud Gate sculpture, families enjoying unseasonably warm autumn weather, and street performers entertaining lunch crowds. The scene's normalcy contrasted sharply with the dangerous meeting about to unfold. Dmitry Volkov waited beside the sculpture's curved base, his expensive suit and carefully styled silver hair projecting cultivated sophistication that failed to mask his brutal reputation. 4 bodyguards flanked him in obvious positions, their presence designed to intimidate rather than protect discreetly. "Marcus Vitale," Dmitry greeted with false warmth, his Russian accent still pronounced despite decades in America. "Thank you for agreeing to this conversation. Yesterday's misunderstanding requires clarification." Marcus maintained calculated distance, his own security positioning themselves strategically throughout the immediate area. "Kidnapping and torturing civilians in my territory doesn't qualify as misunderstanding. It's a violation of established protocols that demand response." "The analyst stumbled onto sensitive financial operations," Dmitry countered, his jovial mask slipping to reveal cold calculation beneath. "We simply sought to ensure his discretion through persuasive conversation." "Persuasion that traumatized a 6-year-old child," Marcus stated flatly. "Children are off limits, Dmitry. That's not negotiable regardless of your operational concerns." Something dangerous flickered in Dmitry's expression before professional composure reasserted itself. "The boy witnessed nothing. He was secured elsewhere during our discussion with his father." "He watched armed men take his father from their home," Marcus corrected, cold fury carefully controlled. "He's already lost his mother. Your operation nearly orphaned him completely. That kind of collateral damage is unacceptable." Dimitri's bodyguard shifted slightly at Marcus's tone, hands moving incrementally toward concealed weapons. Vincent mirrored their movement with equal precision, tension escalating dangerously in the public space. "You're being unusually sentimental about civilian concerns," Dmitry observed, attempting to redirect conversation. "The Marcus Vitale I know makes decisions based on strategic advantage, not emotional attachment to random children." "Then you don't know me as well as you think," Marcus replied. My strategic advantage includes maintaining a city where civilians don't fear random violence. Your operations undermine that stability. The negotiation continued for 20 tense minutes, both men probing for advantage while maintaining surface civility. Marcus revealed carefully selected portions of Daniel's financial discoveries, enough to demonstrate comprehensive knowledge of Bratva operations without exposing the full extent of their intelligence. Dimitri's expression hardened as he recognized the implications. "You're threatening federal exposure? I'm establishing boundaries," Marcus corrected. "Your organization is welcome to operate in Chicago through proper channels and with appropriate coordination. But unauthorized actions, especially those endangering civilians, will be met with comprehensive response." The threat hung between them, weighted with the understanding that Marcus possessed enough evidence to dismantle Bratva operations entirely if pushed. Dimitri's calculated risk assessment was visible in how his jaw tightened, weighing the cost of continued conflict against strategic retreat. "What are your terms?" Dimitri finally asked, pragmatism overriding pride. "Immediate cessation of all surveillance and action regarding Daniel Cooper and his son," Marcus stated. "Coordination of future financial operations through established protocols, and a 20% reduction in your territorial footprint within 60 days. The final demand represented significant concession from Dimitri's organization, enough to establish Marcus's dominance without completely destroying Bratva presence in Chicago. The careful balance maintained uneasy peace while demonstrating clear consequences for violations. Dimitri's expression revealed his distaste for these terms, but also his recognition of their necessity given circumstances. "And in exchange?" "The financial evidence remains private," Marcus offered. "Your operations continue within agreed boundaries. We maintain professional cooperation rather than active conflict." After a long pause, Dimitri extended his hand. "Agreed. But understand, Marcus, this unusual sentimentality toward civilians creates vulnerability. Others will notice, and they will exploit it." Marcus accepted the handshake with firm pressure. "Let them try." The walk back through Millennium Park felt lighter despite the veiled threat in Dimitri's parting words. Vincent fell into step beside Marcus, his expression thoughtful. "He's not wrong about vulnerability," the lieutenant observed carefully. "Protecting Cooper and his kid puts a target on all of us. Then we ensure our security is comprehensive enough that the target doesn't matter," Marcus replied, checking his watch. "Pickup time at Lakeside is 3:15. I don't want to be late." Vincent's eyebrows rose fractionally at this unprecedented prioritization of kindergarten pickup over their usual post-negotiation debriefing, but he wisely didn't comment on his boss's shifting priorities. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. They arrived at Lakeside Elementary with 15 minutes to spare, joining the cluster of parents waiting outside the building. Marcus noted his security team's discreet positions, their presence invisible to civilian eyes, but tactically obvious to his trained awareness. Daniel had arrived directly from Marcus's office, his laptop bag suggesting he'd continued working throughout the day despite his injuries. The analyst's face still bore significant bruising, drawing curious glances from other parents that he studiously ignored. "How did the meeting go?" Daniel asked quietly, positioning himself beside Marcus with the unconscious ease of someone growing comfortable in his presence. "Dimitri agreed to our terms," Marcus reported. "You and Jamie are officially off their radar. The Bratva will focus on restructuring their operations within acceptable parameters." Relief washed across Daniel's features so intensely he had to steady himself against the building. "It's really over? We're safe?" "You're safe," Marcus confirmed, surprised by how much satisfaction he derived from providing that assurance. "Though I'd still recommend maintaining security protocols until we're certain Dimitri honors the agreement." The school doors opened precisely at 3:15, releasing a flood of kindergarteners with varying levels of enthusiasm about their first day. Jamie emerged near the front of the crowd, his dinosaur shirt now decorated with mysterious stains suggesting art projects and lunch adventures. His face lit up when he spotted Daniel and Marcus waiting together, the boy running toward them with unrestrained joy. "Daddy, Mr. Marcus, I made 3 friends and we learned about the letter A, and there's a class rabbit named Butterscotch, and Mrs. Patterson says I'm really good at coloring." The words tumbled out in an excited rush as Jamie crashed into his father's legs, chattering about every detail of his extraordinary day. Daniel lifted his son despite his injuries, laughing at the enthusiastic recounting. "And, Mr. Marcus, guess what?" Jamie continued, including him in the conversation with natural ease. "My friend Tyler said his dad works in a big building downtown too, so maybe we could have a playdate sometime?" The casual mention of playdates and childhood friendships represented normalcy Daniel had feared permanently lost. Marcus watched father and son's interaction, something warm and unfamiliar expanding in his chest at their happiness. "That sounds nice, buddy," Daniel agreed, setting Jamie down to examine the artwork his son produced from his backpack, a crayon drawing of their new apartment building with 3 stick figures labeled in careful kindergarten handwriting. Marcus studied the drawing, noting Jamie's instinctive inclusion of himself in the family portrait alongside Daniel. The simple representation carried unexpected weight, this child's automatic acceptance of his presence in their rebuilt life. The drive back to their building passed with Jamie's continuous narration of kindergarten experiences, his resilience and capacity for joy despite recent trauma both heartbreaking and inspiring. Daniel met Marcus's eyes in the rearview mirror, silent gratitude and something more complex reflecting in his expression. Evening settled over Chicago with spectacular sunset colors reflecting off Lake Michigan, visible from the penthouse windows where Daniel worked while Jamie constructed elaborate block towers in the connected living space. Marcus found himself joining them rather than retreating to his own unit, his presence apparently now expected and welcomed. "The financial documentation is nearly complete," Daniel reported, his laptop screen displaying intricate spreadsheets and transaction records. "Another 2 days of verification and cross-referencing, and we'll have everything needed to leverage Dimitri's compliance long-term." Marcus reviewed the preliminary findings over Daniel's shoulder, impressed by the analyst's meticulous work despite physical discomfort and emotional upheaval. "This is exceptional work. Your attention to detail is exactly what we need." "It's what I do," Daniel replied with a slight smile. "Numbers make sense to me in ways people often don't. There's comfort in data patterns and logical connections." "Mr. Marcus, can you help me with this tower?" Jamie interrupted, gesturing to his increasingly precarious block structure. "It keeps falling when I try to add the top part." Marcus found himself kneeling on the floor, examining the architectural challenge with the same focus he'd apply to tactical problems. "Your foundation is strong, but the weight distribution is uneven. If we reinforce this corner and adjust the angle..." Together, they rebuilt the structure with more stable engineering, Jamie's small hands working alongside Marcus's larger ones with surprising coordination. The simple domestic activity felt foreign, yet somehow natural. Muscle memory from a childhood before violence had defined his existence. "You're really good at building stuff," Jamie observed with childlike directness. "Are you good at other stuff too? Like cooking? Daddy says he can only make like 3 things without burning them." "I heard that," Daniel called from across the room, though his tone carried amusement rather than offense. "It's true, though," Jamie insisted with the brutal honesty unique to 6-year-olds. "Remember the lasagna incident?" Marcus found himself laughing, a genuine sound that surprised everyone, including himself. "The lasagna incident?" "We don't discuss the lasagna incident," Daniel declared with mock severity. "It's been sealed in the vault of family secrets never to be mentioned again." There was smoke and the fire alarm, and Daddy said words I'm not supposed to repeat. Jamie elaborated gleefully, clearly enjoying his father's embarrassment. The easy banter between father and son, now including Marcus in their dynamic, created warmth that transcended the expensive furnishings and security systems surrounding them. For the first time in years, Marcus's penthouse felt less like a fortress and more like an actual home. I should probably head back to my place, Daniel said eventually, noting the time with surprise. Jamie needs dinner and bath and bed routine. Stay, Marcus found himself offering before conscious consideration. I'll order from Giordano's. They deliver. Jamie can eat something more substantial than whatever constitutes your usual weeknight cooking. Daniel hesitated, clearly torn between maintaining appropriate boundaries and accepting the appealing offer. Jamie's enthusiastic, "Please, Daddy, Mr. Marcus has the big TV and we could watch a movie after dinner," apparently decided the matter. Dinner arrived within 40 minutes. Deep dish pizza, Caesar salad, and garlic bread that filled the penthouse with comforting aromas. Jamie's excitement about eating fancy pizza from the restaurant where he'd first met Marcus added layers of meaning to the simple meal. They ate at the dining table that usually remained decorative rather than functional, Jamie's animated conversation bridging any awkwardness between the two men. The boy's natural comfort in Marcus's presence had apparently extended to his father, Daniel gradually relaxing into conversation that touched on topics beyond their dangerous circumstances. Before all this, Marcus asked during a lull in Jamie's monologue about kindergarten social dynamics, "What did you do for fun? Outside work and parenting?" Daniel considered the question as if the concept of personal interests had become foreign. "Before Emma got sick, we used to go hiking most weekends. She loved nature photography, had this whole setup with expensive cameras and lenses. After she died, I sold most of it. Couldn't handle the reminders." The quiet grief in Daniel's voice resonated with Marcus's own experiences of loss, the way beloved objects transformed into painful triggers rather than cherished mementos. "Maybe someday you'll be ready to try again. Different cameras, different trails, but the same appreciation for beauty." "Maybe," Daniel agreed softly, something grateful in his expression at Marcus's understanding rather than empty platitudes about time-healing wounds. After dinner, Jamie's exhaustion from his exciting day became evident despite his protests about not being tired. Daniel carried him to the guest bedroom for bath and bedtime routine, leaving Marcus to clean up the remnants of their meal. Vincent called while Marcus was loading the dishwasher, a domestic task he couldn't remember last performing personally. Security update. Bratva operations show signs of territorial withdrawal as agreed. Dmitry appears to be honoring the terms, at least for now. No suspicious activity around the Cooper residence or the school. Maintain surveillance protocols anyway, Marcus instructed, watching through the doorway as Daniel read bedtime stories to Jamie in the adjacent unit. Dimitri's compliance now doesn't guarantee long-term adherence. Understood. Also, the teams noticed your extended presence in the guest penthouse. Should we adjust security coverage to assume you'll be spending more time there? Marcus heard the carefully neutral tone Vincent employed when diplomatically questioning his boss's unprecedented behavior. Adjust accordingly. The Coopers' security is priority level 1 indefinitely. After disconnecting, Marcus found himself drawn to the connecting doorway, where Daniel's voice carried softly through the quiet evening. The analyst was reading Where the Wild Things Are, performing different voices for each character with theatrical flair that had Jamie giggling despite his obvious exhaustion. And Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all, Daniel read, the words carrying additional weight given their circumstances. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, watching this tender bedtime ritual that represented everything his life had deliberately excluded: safety, domesticity, the simple comfort of being loved unconditionally. concepts that existed in his world only as theoretical constructs rather than lived experiences. Jamie's eyes finally drifted closed mid-story, his small body relaxing completely into sleep's embrace. Daniel finished the book anyway, a parental ritual honored even without conscious audience, then carefully extracted himself from the bed without disturbing his son. "He's completely out," Daniel whispered, joining Marcus in the doorway. "First day of school exhaustion combined with emotional processing from yesterday's trauma. He'll sleep through the night." They moved quietly into the living area, neither quite ready to end the evening despite the late hour. Marcus poured 2 glasses of whiskey, offering one to Daniel, who accepted with surprised appreciation. "To unexpected allies," Daniel offered, raising his glass with slight irony. "To brave children who know when to ask for help," Marcus countered, the toast carrying deeper meaning as their glasses touched. The whiskey burned pleasantly, expensive and smooth in a way that matched the penthouse's refined aesthetic. Daniel settled into the leather sofa with visible relief, his injuries making extended standing uncomfortable despite pain medication. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel ventured after a comfortable silence. "Why does someone like you, someone with obvious power and resources, choose this life? The danger, the moral complexity, the constant vigilance?" The question should have been intrusive, yet coming from Daniel, it felt like genuine curiosity rather than judgment. Marcus considered his response carefully, weighing how much honesty this relative stranger deserved. "I was 12 when my father was killed in a territorial dispute," Marcus finally answered, staring into his whiskey as memories surfaced. "My mother lasted 6 months before grief and poverty finished what violence started. My younger brother and I ended up on the streets, and Chicago doesn't forgive weakness." Daniel remained silent, giving space for Marcus to continue at his own pace. "My brother died when I was 15. Wrong place, wrong time, caught in crossfire between gangs fighting over territory neither actually controlled. I decided then that if I was going to survive, I'd build something strong enough that random violence couldn't touch it. Power became survival, and survival became purpose." "I'm sorry," Daniel said simply, the words carrying genuine empathy rather than empty sympathy. "Loss like that, it shapes everything that comes after." "It does," Marcus agreed, surprised by how easily the truth had emerged. "I built an empire on the foundation of ensuring no one could hurt me or mine again. The problem being, I'd eliminated everyone who qualified as mine along the way. Until yesterday." The implication hung between them. Jamie's desperate plea had somehow penetrated defenses Marcus had spent 2 decades perfecting. Daniel seemed to recognize the significance of this admission, the vulnerability required for Marcus to acknowledge emotional investment. "Jamie has that effect on people," Daniel observed with paternal pride. "Even before Emma died, he had this way of seeing straight through to what mattered. No artifice, no manipulation, just genuine connection." "He reminds me of my brother," Marcus admitted quietly. "That same fearless faith that good people exist and will help if asked properly. Alessandro had that quality until the day he died. This conviction that the world was fundamentally good despite all evidence otherwise." They talked late into the night, conversation flowing with unexpected ease between 2 men whose lives had collided through extraordinary circumstances. Daniel shared memories of Emma, their courtship, her battle with cancer, and the devastating aftermath of single parenthood while processing overwhelming grief. Marcus found himself reciprocating with stories he'd never shared. Childhood memories before violence, his father's legitimate business attempts, the complicated love-hate relationship with power that defined his adult existence. The conversation eventually wound down as exhaustion claimed them both, the emotional intensity of sharing painful histories taking its toll. Daniel stood to leave, swaying slightly as his injuries protested the late hour. "Stay," Marcus offered again, this time the invitation carrying different weight. The guest room in my unit is prepared. No sense navigating back to yours when you're this tired and sore. Daniel hesitated only briefly before accepting, too exhausted to maintain proper boundaries. Just for tonight. Jamie will panic if he wakes up and can't find me immediately. We'll leave the connecting door open, Marcus assured him. First sign of Jamie stirring, you'll hear it. The following days established an unexpected rhythm. Mornings coordinating Jamie's school routine, afternoons with Daniel documenting Bratva operations while Marcus managed his legitimate business interests, evenings together that increasingly felt like family dinners rather than strategic allies sharing space. Jamie's attachment to Marcus deepened with each passing day, the boy gravitating toward him with the unconscious trust children reserve for adults who make them feel genuinely safe. Marcus found himself adjusting his schedule around kindergarten pickup, attending parent-teacher conferences, and learning the intricate social dynamics of 6-year-old friendships. Tyler's birthday party is Saturday, Jamie announced one evening, waving a colorful invitation with evident excitement. Can we go? Please. There's going to be laser tag and pizza and a huge cake. Daniel and Marcus exchanged glances over the boy's head. Silent communication about security protocols and potential exposure risks. Vincent had been monitoring all families in Jamie's class, but public venues presented complications. We'll make it work, Marcus decided, watching Jamie's face light up with joy. But Vincent comes with us, and we maintain awareness of our surroundings. I promise to use my secret agent skills, Jamie agreed solemnly, having absorbed more security consciousness than any 6-year-old should require. Saturday arrived with Jamie's excitement reaching fever pitch, the boy practically vibrating with anticipation as they prepared for the party. Daniel had purchased an appropriately impressive gift, a dinosaur science kit that Jamie had personally approved as super cool. The laser tag facility occupied a renovated warehouse in Wicker Park, its neon-lit exterior promising entertainment for children's birthday celebrations. Vincent conducted a thorough security sweep before they entered, his team positioning themselves strategically throughout the venue. "This is amazing," Jamie breathed, taking in the elaborate laser tag arena with wide eyes. "Look, Daddy, there's like actual mazes and hiding spots and everything." Tyler's parents greeted them warmly, showing no particular concern about the additional security presence beyond mild curiosity about family bodyguards. The party was well attended, children from Jamie's kindergarten class running with unrestrained energy through the facility. Marcus found himself participating in laser tag alongside Daniel and a dozen overexcited 6-year-olds, his tactical training providing unexpected advantage in a children's game. Jamie's delighted laughter as they worked together to defeat the opposing team created memories Marcus hadn't known he was capable of treasuring. "You're surprisingly good at this," Daniel observed during a brief ceasefire, both men catching their breath while Jamie coordinated strategy with his teammates. "Military tactics apply universally," Marcus replied with dry humor, "though the stakes are considerably lower when failure means getting tagged with a laser rather than actual bullets." The moment of levity was interrupted by Vincent's voice through Marcus's discreet earpiece. Possible situation. 2 men matching Bratva profiles entered the facility 3 minutes ago. Could be coincidence, could be surveillance. Marcus's demeanor shifted instantly from playful to alert, his eyes scanning the facility with tactical precision. He spotted the individuals in question near the snack bar, both carrying the particular awareness of trained operatives rather than civilian parents. "Daniel, keep Jamie with the group," Marcus instructed quietly. "Vincent and I need to check something. Stay visible. Stay with other parents." Daniel's expression tightened with understanding and fear, but he nodded, immediately moving to where Jamie played with his friends. Marcus caught Vincent's eye across the arena, both men converging on the potential threat with calculated casualness. The two Bratva operatives recognized Marcus simultaneously, their body language shifting from surveillance to defensive alertness. One reached for something concealed beneath his jacket before his companion grabbed his arm, clearly recognizing the stupidity of violence in a children's birthday party venue. "Gentlemen," Marcus greeted them with deceptive pleasantness, positioning himself to block their sightlines to Jamie. "Interesting coincidence, finding you at a 6-year-old's birthday party. Care to explain your presence?" The taller operative maintained careful, neutral expression. "Public venue. Free country. We're not here for trouble." "Then you won't mind leaving immediately," Marcus suggested, the polite phrasing failing to mask the absolute command in his tone. "And conveying to Dmitri that surveillance of the Cooper family violates our agreement. Further violations will void the arrangement entirely." The implied threat hung between them. Marcus possessed enough evidence to destroy Bratva operations completely, a nuclear option held in reserve but fully operational if required. The operatives exchanged glances, clearly weighing orders against consequences. "We're leaving," the second man finally stated, raising his hands in placating gesture. Message received. Vincent escorted them out personally, ensuring their departure and documenting their vehicle information for follow-up investigation. Marcus returned to the party, forcing his tension to dissipate before rejoining Daniel and Jamie. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked quietly, his analytical mind having clearly noted the confrontation despite distance. "Handled," Marcus assured him. "Dmitri testing boundaries. We've reinforced them clearly." The party continued without further incident, Jamie blissfully unaware of the danger that had briefly manifested. When they finally departed with a very tired but extremely happy boy, Marcus made the decision he'd been avoiding. "We need to talk about long-term security," he stated during the drive home. "The Bratva's surveillance suggests they're not fully committed to our agreement. That means enhanced protocols." Daniel's expression revealed his understanding of the implications. "Enhanced how?" "Moving you permanently into my building with comprehensive security coverage," Marcus explained. "Full protection protocols starting immediately." "Understood," Daniel replied quietly. Jamie's voice cut through their discussion from the back seat. "Are the bad men coming back?" Both adults froze, realizing their supposedly private conversation had been overheard. Daniel turned in his seat to face his son, parental instinct overriding security concerns. "Nobody," Daniel assured him. "Mr. Marcus is just making extra sure we stay safe, like having a really good security system." "Like superheroes protecting their secret base," Marcus added, catching Jamie's eye in the rearview mirror. "Extra precautions to make sure nothing bad happens." Jamie considered this with 6-year-old logic. "Okay, but can my secret base have better snacks? The granola bars in our apartment are boring." The tension broke as both men laughed at the boys' priorities, danger and security protocols less important than snack quality in kindergarten worldview. Yet beneath the humor, Marcus recognized the truth. Jamie's innocent question had revealed that even children noticed when their world wasn't quite normal. "This is becoming real," Daniel said quietly, studying the documents. "It is," Marcus confirmed, "but you and Jamie will be safe. That's what matters." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful rather than panicked. "Jamie's happy here," he finally stated. "For the first time since Emma died, he's genuinely happy. New school, new friends, stability he hasn't had in over a year. And, Marcus prompted when Daniel trailed off. "And I think I'm happy too," Daniel admitted, meeting Marcus's eyes directly. "Which is terrifying in its own way. Relying on you, trusting you, letting Jamie get attached. It violates every self-preservation instinct I've developed. But it also feels right in ways I can't fully explain." The honest vulnerability in Daniel's confession resonated with Marcus's own conflicted feelings about their evolving dynamic. What had begun as moral obligation to help a desperate child had transformed into something far more complex. Genuine investment in their well-being, protective instincts that transcended strategic advantage, and increasingly undeniable emotional attachment. "I'm not accustomed to this," Marcus confessed, gesturing vaguely at the domestic situation surrounding them, caring about people's daily happiness, attending children's parties, worrying about snack preferences. "My life has been deliberately free of these attachments." "And now?" Daniel asked. "Now I can't imagine my days without Jamie's questions about dinosaurs or your terrible attempts at cooking," Marcus replied with rare candor, which is either growth or dangerous weakness depending on perspective. Daniel smiled slightly. "Maybe it's both. Maybe the strongest people are the ones who allow themselves vulnerability despite the risks." The conversation continued late into the night, both men navigating the complicated territory between gratitude and genuine affection, protection and partnership, temporary arrangement and something permanent. By the time Daniel finally retreated to his own unit, an unspoken understanding had formed. This unconventional family they'd accidentally created was worth the complications it introduced. The November rain pelted Chicago's streets with relentless intensity, turning the city into a maze of reflected neon and shadowed threats. Marcus stood at his penthouse window watching the storm, his reflection overlaying the cityscape he'd spent 15 years controlling through calculated force and strategic dominance. 3 weeks had passed since the birthday party incident. 3 weeks of false security while Dimitri's compliance masked something darker brewing beneath the surface. Vincent's latest intelligence report lay on Marcus's desk, its contents confirming suspicions that had been building like the storm outside. "They're planning something big," Vincent stated, entering the office with his tablet displaying surveillance data. "Dimitri's been consolidating resources, pulling operatives from other territories. This isn't about Cooper's financial evidence anymore. It's about reputation. We humiliated him publicly, and he's preparing a response." Marcus studied the data with cold focus, patterns emerging that spoke of coordination beyond simple territorial retaliation. "He's waited deliberately, lulling us into complacency while building comprehensive operation." "Agreed. The question is, what's the primary target? Our operations, or something more personal?" The answer materialized with terrifying clarity as Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming message from an unknown number. A single photograph. Jamie's kindergarten classroom, taken through the window from outside. The boy visible at his desk, completely unaware of the surveillance. Beneath the image, a simple message. "Your weakness has a name, and he's 6 years old." Ice flooded Marcus's veins, the calculated fury he was known for crystallizing into something far more dangerous. Absolute protective rage combined with tactical precision. "Recall all security to priority alpha protocols. Lock down the school, extract Jamie and Daniel immediately, and activate every asset we have in monitoring Bratva movements." Vincent was already moving, phone pressed to his ear as he coordinated the emergency response. "Teams are 3 minutes from the school. Daniel's at the penthouse working. I'm dispatching security there now." Marcus was moving before conscious decision, his weapon checked and secured as he headed for the elevator. Every instinct screamed that Dimitri wouldn't make empty threats. The photograph represented declaration of intent, not mere intimidation. The drive to Lakeside Elementary took 8 minutes that felt like hours, Marcus's mind racing through tactical scenarios and worst-case possibilities. Vincent coordinated from the passenger seat, his calm efficiency the only thing preventing Marcus's protective fury from consuming rational strategy. "Jamie's classroom is on lockdown per our protocols," Vincent reported. "Security confirms no suspicious activity on school grounds yet, but 3 vehicles matching Bratva profiles are circling the perimeter." "They're testing response time," Marcus realized grimly. "Seeing how fast we mobilize, where our weaknesses are in coverage, this is reconnaissance for the actual operation." They arrived to find Mrs. Patterson's classroom secured. Two of Marcus's plainclothes operatives positioned discreetly inside while children continued their afternoon activities, blissfully unaware of the danger. Jamie spotted Marcus through the door window, his face lighting up with surprise and delight before confusion replaced it. Mr. Marcus never came during school hours. "Is everything all right?" Mrs. Patterson asked, her professional composure masking obvious concern at the irregular pickup. "Family emergency," Marcus stated, the prepared excuse delivered smoothly. "I need to take Jamie immediately." Jamie gathered his belongings with practiced efficiency, sensing something serious despite the adult's attempts at normalcy. His small hand slipped into Marcus's with complete trust as they exited the building, Vincent's team forming protective perimeter around them. "Where's Daddy?" Jamie asked, his voice small as he registered the unusual security presence. "Is he okay?" "He's fine, waiting at home," Marcus assured him, though his attention remained fixed on scanning their surroundings for threats. "We're just being extra careful today." The return drive passed in tense silence, broken only by Jamie's occasional questions that Marcus answered with careful reassurance. The boy's perception had sharpened over recent weeks. He noticed things other 6-year-olds might miss, residual wariness from his earlier trauma making him sensitive to adult tension. Daniel met them in the penthouse's private elevator, relief flooding his features as he gathered Jamie into a fierce embrace. "Thank God," when security showed up saying there was a threat. "We need to talk," Marcus interrupted, his tone leaving no doubt about the severity. "Jamie, can you play in your room for a bit? Your dad and I have some grown-up things to discuss." The boy hesitated, clearly sensing the gravity, but obediently retreated to the guest bedroom with his tablet and headphones. Once the door closed, Daniel turned to Marcus with barely controlled fear. "How bad?" Marcus showed him the photograph, watching Daniel's face drain of color. "Dimitri's making this personal. He waited until we felt secure, then demonstrated he can reach Jamie anytime he wants." "Oh God." Daniel sank onto the sofa, hands shaking as he processed the threat to his son. "We need to run. Leave Chicago, new identities, whatever it takes to get Jamie somewhere safe." "Running won't solve this," Marcus stated, though his own instincts screamed to hide them both somewhere unreachable. "Dimitri has international connections. He'd find you eventually. The only permanent solution is eliminating the threat entirely." "You mean killing him?" Daniel said flatly, forcing himself to confront the violent reality he'd been sheltered from. "I mean ensuring he can never threaten Jamie again," Marcus corrected carefully, "which might involve several options depending on circumstances." Daniel met his eyes with unexpected steel beneath the fear. "Whatever you need to do to keep Jamie safe, do it. I don't care about moral complications anymore, not when it comes to my son." The transformation in the mild-mannered analyst, from someone who'd probably never considered violence acceptable to someone authorizing deadly force, spoke volumes about paternal protection transcending civilized boundaries. Marcus recognized that desperate love had felt it himself every moment since Jamie's small hand first gripped his. "I need you and Jamie somewhere secure while we handle this," Marcus explained, already planning the logistics. "Somewhere even Dimitri's resources can't penetrate." "No." Daniel's refusal was immediate and absolute. "I'm not hiding while you risk yourself for us. Jamie stays somewhere safe, yes. But I'm helping however I can." "Daniel." "I have comprehensive evidence of every Bratva operation in Chicago," Daniel interrupted. "That's my contribution to this fight." Marcus wanted to refuse, to lock Daniel somewhere impregnable alongside his son. But the analyst's determined expression and valid strategic point couldn't be dismissed. They needed Dimitri neutralized permanently, which required both force and evidence. "Agreed," Marcus finally conceded. "But Jamie goes to my secure facility in Wisconsin, completely off-grid, guarded by my most trusted operatives. He stays there until this is resolved." Daniel nodded, relief and grief warring across his features at the necessity of separating from his son during danger. I'll tell him it's a special trip. Maybe, maybe that it's like superhero training camp? The conversation with Jamie broke Marcus's heart in ways he hadn't known possible. The boy's brave acceptance of temporary separation, his trust that the adults would keep him safe, and his fierce hug that lingered as if memorizing Marcus's presence. All of it carved permanent marks in carefully guarded emotional armor. "You promise you'll come get me when it's safe?" Jamie asked, those earnest eyes demanding truth rather than comfortable lies. "I promise," Marcus swore, the words carrying weight of absolute commitment, "and I always keep my promises." "I know you do." Jamie's simple faith in Marcus's reliability was humbling. "That's why you're my hero, even more than Superman." Vincent personally escorted Jamie to the Wisconsin facility, taking 3 additional security operatives and enough firepower to repel a small army. Marcus watched the helicopter disappear into gray November sky, a piece of his heart leaving with the small figure waving goodbye through the window. "He'll be safe there," Daniel said quietly beside him, though his own voice trembled with barely suppressed emotion. "He has to be." "He will be," Marcus promised with absolute conviction. "Now let's make sure he has a city worth returning to." The war room Marcus maintained in his building's subbasement had never seen such intensive use. Daniel worked at a dedicated terminal while Marcus coordinated physical operations across the city. "The financial evidence is ready," Daniel announced after 6 straight hours of work. Exhaustion evident, but overridden by determined focus. "Everything from money laundering to weapons trafficking to connections with international cartels. If we release this to federal investigators, the Bratva won't just lose Chicago, they'll lose everything on the eastern seaboard." Marcus studied the compiled data with grim satisfaction. And Dmitri personally? Directly implicated in 17 major crimes, all with paper trails leading back to his verified accounts and properties. He's looking at multiple life sentences without possibility of parole. Good. Marcus began composing a message on his encrypted phone, his strategy crystallizing with cold clarity. "We're going to offer Dmitri a choice: voluntary withdrawal from Chicago with operations intact elsewhere, or complete organizational destruction, with him dying in federal prison." "You think he'll accept exile over fighting?" Daniel asked skeptically. "No," Marcus admitted. "But offering the choice forces him to either accept rational self-interest or commit to irrational retaliation. Either way, we control the terms of engagement." The message went out at midnight. "We have comprehensive evidence of all Bratva operations. Meet tomorrow, 2 p.m., Millennium Park. Come alone or come with your entire organization. Either way, this ends tomorrow. Your choice is exile or extinction." Dimitri's response came within minutes. "You threaten me with evidence while hiding behind civilians. Tomorrow you'll learn what real power looks like. Bring the analyst. I want him to watch what happens when weaklings play in dangerous worlds." The explicit threat against Daniel transformed Marcus's calculated strategy into something far more personal. "He wants you as audience to my destruction," Marcus interpreted coldly. Classic intimidation tactic. "Then let's give him a show," Daniel replied, surprising Marcus with his steady resolve, but not the one he's expecting. They planned through the night, coordinating with federal contacts Marcus had cultivated, positioning his entire organization for comprehensive operation, and preparing contingencies for every scenario. Daniel's analytical mind proved invaluable, spotting tactical vulnerabilities and suggesting counter-strategies that Marcus's more straightforward approach might have missed. "You're better at this than you realize," Marcus observed as dawn broke over Chicago's skyline, illuminating their war room with cold morning light. "Turns out analyzing criminal financial patterns translates surprisingly well to tactical planning," Daniel replied with exhausted humor. "Who knew my boring accountant skills would prove useful in actual warfare?" The hours before the meeting passed with agonizing slowness. Every minute brought fresh intelligence about Bratva movements. They were mobilizing comprehensively, pulling resources from across their entire organization. Dmitri wasn't planning a negotiation. He was preparing for war. "He's bringing at least 30 operatives," Vincent reported at noon, his expression grim. "They're positioning around Millennium Park in clear violation of the agreed terms. This is an ambush, not a meeting." "Expected," Marcus stated calmly, though his mind raced through tactical adjustments. Dimitri's pride won't accept defeat, so he's chosen extinction. We accommodate his preference. Daniel checked his phone obsessively. The secure feed from Wisconsin showing Jamie safe at the facility, playing games with the staff who'd been carefully selected for their combination of deadly competence and genuine warmth with children. The boy's safety was the only thing preventing Daniel from completely unraveling under the stress. "It's time," Marcus finally announced, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. "Remember the plan. You stay in the vehicle with Vincent until I signal. No heroics, no improvisation." "Agreed," Daniel replied, though his expression suggested he'd rewrite that plan if circumstances demanded protecting Marcus. The drive to Millennium Park passed in tense silence, both men absorbed in final mental preparations. The storm from earlier had cleared, leaving Chicago's afternoon crisp and bright, deceptive normality masking the violence about to erupt. They arrived to find Dmitri waiting beside Cloud Gate exactly as before, but this time, no pretense of civilization remained. 30 armed men surrounded the area in obvious positions, their presence designed to intimidate rather than conceal. "Marcus Vitale," Dmitri greeted with cold satisfaction. "You've brought your pet analyst. Good. He should witness what happens to those who challenge the Bratva." Marcus walked forward with absolute confidence, his body language projecting control despite being outnumbered 6-1. "Last chance, Dmitri. Take the evidence package, accept exile from Chicago, and maintain your operations elsewhere, or force me to destroy everything you've built." "You're surrounded by my men with your weakness sitting in that car," Dmitri sneered. "Where exactly is your leverage?" "You're focused on the obvious threats," Marcus replied calmly, while missing the real danger. As if choreographed, federal agents emerged from concealed positions throughout the park, over 50 of them, heavily armed and carrying arrest warrants. Simultaneously, Marcus's own security team appeared from strategic locations, creating a layered perimeter that trapped Dimitri's forces completely. "You see, I did bring the analyst," Marcus continued, watching realization dawn on Dimitri's face. "But I also brought the evidence directly to federal investigators who've been building a RICO case against your organization for 2 years. Daniel's documentation provided the final pieces they needed. You're done, Dmitri." The Bratva leader's expression transformed from smug confidence to desperate calculation. His hand moved toward his weapon, clearly considering whether personal violence might salvage irretrievable situation. "Don't," Marcus warned, his voice dropping to that lethal register. "Your men are surrounded by federal agents. Any violence now just adds to your sentence. You've lost. Accept it with whatever dignity remains." For a long moment, the entire park balanced on the edge of catastrophic violence. Dimitri's operatives watched their leader, awaiting orders while federal agents maintained weapons ready. The slightest provocation would trigger bloodshed that would stain Chicago's streets for years. Then Dimitri's shoulders sagged fractionally, defeat registered even as hatred burned in his eyes. "You've won this round, Vitale, but you've made powerful enemies. They'll come for you, for the analyst, for that child you've grown so attached to." "Let them come," Marcus replied with absolute certainty. "I've spent 15 years building an empire. Now I have something worth protecting with everything I've created. Anyone threatening my family will learn exactly how dangerous that makes me." The word family hung in the air. Marcus's first public acknowledgement of his emotional investment in Daniel and Jamie. Dmitri caught the significance, his expression twisting with vindictive satisfaction despite his capture. "Then you've already lost," he sneered as federal agents moved to arrest him. "Because love is the ultimate weakness in our world, they'll exploit it, and you'll watch everyone you care about suffer." Marcus didn't respond, simply watching as Dmitri and his entire operation were systematically dismantled. 30 arrests, millions in seized assets, and the complete collapse of Bratva presence in Chicago, all executed with precision that spoke of months of coordination between Marcus's organization and federal law enforcement. Daniel emerged from the vehicle as the immediate danger passed, moving to stand beside Marcus with quiet solidarity. "Is it really over?" "The Bratva threat is eliminated," Marcus confirmed, "but Dmitri was right about one thing. I've changed the game by allowing personal attachments. Other organizations will notice, and some will test whether that's exploitable." "So what do we do?" Daniel asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "We build something stronger than fear," Marcus replied, surprising himself with the conviction behind the words. "An organization that protects what matters rather than simply accumulating power, and we do it together." The helicopter ride to Wisconsin felt different than the tense departure 2 days earlier. This time, anticipation of reunion rather than fear of separation filled the cabin. Marcus watched Chicago disappear behind them, the city he'd controlled through violence now representing something worth building rather than merely dominating. Jamie spotted them through the facility's window before they'd fully landed, his small figure pressing against the glass with barely contained excitement. The moment the helicopter's doors opened, he burst out of the building with security personnel scrambling to keep pace. "Daddy! Mr. Marcus!" Jamie's shout of pure joy carried across the landing pad as he ran with 6-year-old abandon toward his family. Daniel caught his son first, lifting Jamie despite his still healing injuries, both crying openly with relief and love. Marcus maintained respectful distance, giving them their moment while his own chest tightened with emotion he'd spent years denying himself. Then Jamie was reaching for him, small arms extending with absolute expectation that Marcus would complete their embrace. The three of them stood together in fading afternoon light, an unconventional family forged through trauma and choice, bound by something stronger than blood. "You kept your promise," Jamie said seriously, small hands cupping Marcus's face with endearing solemnity. "You came back and kept everyone safe, just like a real superhero." "We all kept each other safe," Marcus corrected gently. "That's what families do." The following weeks transformed from crisis management to genuine domesticity. Daniel officially moved into Marcus's penthouse, the guest unit, converted into proper living space for father and son. Jamie's laughter became common soundtrack to evenings once marked only by silence and strategic planning. Marcus began the complex process of legitimizing his entire organization, using Dimitri's downfall as leverage to negotiate immunity for past operations in exchange for cooperation with federal investigations into remaining criminal enterprises. The transition would take years, but for the first time, Marcus envisioned a future where power derived from legitimate success rather than calculated violence. "You're really doing this," Daniel observed one evening, reviewing the restructuring plans that would fundamentally alter Marcus's empire. "Walking away from everything you built." "I'm building something better," Marcus corrected, watching through the window as Jamie played with building blocks, constructing elaborate structures with intense focus. Something Jamie can be proud of when he's old enough to understand. Daniel moved closer, his presence at Marcus's side having become natural rather than surprising over recent months. "And what about us? This arrangement we've fallen into?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications they'd both carefully avoided addressing directly. Their relationship had evolved through shared danger and domestic proximity, growing into something neither had anticipated but both had come to depend upon. "What do you want it to be?" Marcus asked, turning to face Daniel directly for the first time since the question emerged. "I want—" Daniel paused, clearly organizing thoughts carefully. "I want what we've accidentally created. This family we've built from impossible circumstances. Jamie adores you, relies on you. And I've come to—" He trailed off, vulnerability evident in his expression. "Say it," Marcus encouraged softly. "I've come to love you," Daniel finished quietly. "Which is terrifying and complicated and probably inadvisable given everything. But it's true." Marcus felt something long frozen crack completely within his chest. Emotions he'd buried beneath ambition and violence flooding through carefully maintained walls. "I watched my brother die because I wasn't strong enough to protect him. I swore I'd never care about anyone enough to experience that pain again. And then a 6-year-old boy ran into my restaurant and destroyed 15 years of emotional armor in under 5 minutes." "And his father?" Daniel prompted with slight smile. "His father proved that strength isn't just power and control," Marcus admitted. "That building something worth protecting requires vulnerability I'd convinced myself was weakness. You've taught me what my empire was missing, purpose beyond mere survival." Their kiss happened naturally, the physical confirmation of emotions that had been building since that first night sharing whiskey and painful histories. When they finally separated, Jamie's voice cut through the moment with perfect childlike timing. "Are you guys kissing? That's so gross. But also, does this mean Mr. Marcus is staying forever?" Both men laughed, the tension breaking as they turned to face the boy who'd brought them together. "Would that be okay with you?" Marcus asked seriously. Jamie considered with exaggerated thoughtfulness before his face split into a brilliant smile. "Yeah, you're family now. Families stay together." 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same penthouse, but the space had transformed completely. Jamie's artwork decorated formerly bare walls, family photos replaced expensive impersonal art, and the sound of laughter had become commonplace, where silence once reigned. The legitimate restructuring of his empire was progressing ahead of schedule, Marcus's reputation and resources transitioning into a corporate entity that would eventually operate entirely within legal boundaries. Some former associates had departed rather than adapt, but core loyalty remained, his people following their leader into this new territory. Daniel had officially joined the organization's financial division, his analytical skills proving invaluable in navigating complex, legitimate business structures. Their partnership had extended from personal into professional, each complementing the other's strengths with surprising synergy. And Jamie, brave, resilient Jamie, had bloomed in the stability they'd created. His kindergarten teacher reported exceptional progress, the trauma he'd experienced channeled into fierce protectiveness of his friends and surprising maturity for his age. But he was also still beautifully, ordinarily 6, obsessed with dinosaurs, convinced vegetables were optional, and absolutely certain that his family was the best family in the entire world. "Mr. Marcus?" Jamie's voice interrupted Marcus's reflection as the boy appeared in his study doorway. "Daddy says dinner's ready, and also that you promised not to work through meals anymore." "Your father's right," Marcus agreed, saving his documents and rising to join his family. "I did promise." Jamie slipped his hand into Marcus's as they walked toward the kitchen where Daniel was setting out their meal, considerably improved from his early attempts, though still prone to occasional culinary disasters that had become family legend. "Daddy made spaghetti and meatballs," Jamie reported, "and he only set off the smoke alarm once, which is like a new record." "I heard that," Daniel called from the kitchen, though his tone carried amusement rather than offense. They sat together at the table that had once been purely decorative, now the center of their daily routines. Conversation flowed easily. Jamie's latest kindergarten drama, Daniel's progress on a particularly complex financial analysis, Marcus's meeting with city officials about a new construction project. Ordinary, domestic, beautifully mundane. Everything Marcus had deliberately excluded from his life, now representing his greatest achievement. "I have something for you both," Marcus announced as they finished eating, producing two small boxes he'd been carrying for weeks while awaiting the right moment. Jamie opened his first with 6-year-old enthusiasm, revealing a silver bracelet engraved with coordinates. "What do the numbers mean?" "They're the exact location where we first met," Marcus explained. "The place where my life changed forever because a brave boy asked for help." Jamie studied the bracelet with reverent attention before looking up with shining eyes. "I'll keep it forever and ever. It's my most special treasure." Daniel opened his box more slowly, his expression transforming as he revealed a simple platinum band. "Marcus." "It's not a proposal," Marcus clarified quickly, though his heart raced with vulnerability he'd never experienced before. "Not yet, anyway. But it's a promise that when I do ask, and I will, you'll know it comes from someone who understands what it means to build a life together rather than merely existing side by side." Daniel's response was interrupted by Jamie's excited exclamation. "Does this mean we're getting married? Can I be the ring bearer? Tyler said ring bearers get to carry the rings on special pillows." Both men laughed, the moment's intensity broken by childlike enthusiasm that somehow made it more meaningful rather than less. "Someday," Daniel promised his son, though his eyes remained locked on Marcus. "When the time is right." That evening, after Jamie had been tucked in with his usual elaborate bedtime routine, Marcus and Daniel stood on the penthouse balcony overlooking Chicago's glittering lights. The city Marcus had once controlled through fear now represented home in ways he'd never imagined possible. "Thank you," Daniel said quietly, leaning against Marcus's shoulder with comfortable intimacy. "For what?" "For being the person who answered when Jamie asked for help. For protecting us when we had nothing to offer in return. For choosing us over the empire you'd built. For proving that even the most hardened hearts can learn to love again." Marcus wrapped his arm around Daniel, pulling him closer against November's returning chill. "I should be thanking you. You and Jamie gave me something worth being better for. You proved that real strength isn't avoiding vulnerability, it's choosing it deliberately despite knowing the risks." Below them, Chicago pulsed with life, millions of stories unfolding simultaneously, each person navigating their own struggles and triumphs. Marcus had once seen the city only as territory to control, but now he recognized it as home to people worth protecting, including the family that had accidentally become his entire world. "Daddy? Mr. Marcus?" Jamie's sleepy voice called from his bedroom. "I had a nightmare. Can I sleep with you guys?" They found him standing in his doorway, clutching his stuffed dinosaur with one hand while the other rubbed sleep from his eyes. The vulnerability in his small frame, this child who'd survived so much, yet still sometimes needed comfort from bad dreams, encapsulated everything Marcus now fought to protect. "Come here, buddy," Daniel invited, and Jamie scrambled between them as they settled into the oversized bed that had once seemed impossibly empty. The boy fell asleep within minutes, secure between the two men who'd become his foundation. Marcus lay awake longer, watching Jamie's peaceful face and feeling Daniel's steady breathing against his side. This was what his brother Alessandro had believed in. The fundamental goodness worth fighting for, even when violence seemed to rule their world. This was the future Marcus had never dared imagine, but now couldn't envision living without. A child's desperate plea had shattered his carefully constructed isolation, teaching him that true power wasn't controlling everything through fear, but having something precious worth protecting with everything you'd built. As sleep finally claimed him, surrounded by his accidentally assembled family, Marcus Vitale realized the truth Dmitri had gotten backwards. Love wasn't a weakness to be exploited. It was the strength that made everything else worthwhile. And anyone threatening that would discover exactly how dangerous a man became when fighting not for power, but for family. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.